Good evening. How are y'all doing? How many of y'all have never heard me speak before, anytime ever? Okay, a lot of you. All right. Well, I'll tell you real quick, I've got a special guest here. My mother is actually here, Jenny Stickland, and she's actually only heard me speak twice because after raising me in Hearst, Euless, Bedford, and Tarrant County my entire life, I got elected, and then they immediately moved to Alaska, which was, not planned. I told her it was cold, and she figured it out finally after 7 years. So she's back to Texas, living in Crescent. So I am Jonathan Stickland. I served in the Texas House of Representatives for 8 years. And I actually hold the record for having the most money spent against me in the Texas legislature in a primary and general election in the history of Texas. That means I made a lot of people upset. And thank you. Yeah. We also had some of the biggest grassroots victories. We actually never lost. 8-8, 8 for 8, undefeated. And there was one simple reason. It was because you guys, the grassroots, stuck behind us the entire time. The Austin lobby and the establishment, they threw everything they had at us. I had to answer for posts that I had put on the internet when I was 16 years old. I mean, they cut up our lives and tried to fillet us and do everything else. But the truth is that the people stood with us. And I learned very early on in my career that every single elected official has a very simple decision to make. You see, you cannot be popular in Austin with those people down there and still go back home and tell the truth to voters. You have to make a conscious decision. And if you don't make a conscious decision, they end up making it for you. And little naive me, I was 27 years old. I'm actually a high school dropout. Second elected official in Texas history to have a GED. Me, right here. If that's not proof that I didn't plan to ever run for office, I don't know what is. But I'm the guy that wasn't supposed to win. I was 27 years old. I got conned into running against a 16-year incumbent, a guy by the name of Todd Smith. And for those of you that don't know much about politics, having the name Todd Smith is a really good ballot name, okay? Much better than Jonathan Stickland, which everyone tries to throw an R into. We actually had to end up buying JonathanStrickland.com because people were like, I'm emailing you and we're not hearing back. I'm like, did you put an R in it? Oh, I once got a $10,000 donation from a guy made out to the Stickland campaign, but we took it and the bank got used to it over time. But my point is, I was 27 years old. I'm taking on a 16-year incumbent, trial lawyer with a bunch of degrees up on the wall. He had been a chairman down in the Texas House and he had $1 million in the bank. $1 million in the bank. And I got conned into it. We ended up spending $72,000 in that election, being outspent almost 5-1, and we won by 20 points. And we won by 20 points because I didn't have time to do anything except for one thing, and that was block walk. And this fat guy, I didn't have a beard at the time, this fat 27-year-old kid with a GED started knocking on the doors of the constituents of House District 92. And what I found was, a whole bunch of people are sick and tired of being lied to. It's real easy to campaign as a conservative, but apparently there's a disconnect in the travel down 35 to get to Austin. Because every single year, me and you have seen the same thing. How many of you have seen your property taxes go up? Yeah. How many of you guys realize that the border is less secure today than it ever has been before? How come we're having to come down here and talk about a victory with Republicans in charge of every aspect of state government, and we're happy about getting constitutional carry?
Yeah, permitless carry, thank you.
Permitless carry.
We didn't get what we wanted.
I filed that bill for 6 years, and that was a much better constitutional carry bill. But we, for years, have been sitting around and enjoying little favors, pacifiers in our mouth from elected officials. For almost 20 years, we've been in complete control of the Texas government. Yet state spending has gone up like this. When I came into office 9 years ago now, Rick Perry was governor, and the all-in state budget in the state of Texas, this includes money that we drew down from the federal government, this includes rainy day fund money, this includes everything, $176 billion. Today we have Republicans trying to sell us that the budget that they passed, which is over $265 billion, is somehow conservative. That's just in 8 years. And ladies and gentlemen, year after year, these people come to us and they tell us how bad the progressive liberals have taken over the Democrat Party and how bad the Democrats are if they get elected. But the truth is that every single one of us has to look in the mirror and realize Democrats didn't do any of it here in Texas. It was people with an R next to their name that have trampled on our rights, spent our money, taxed us into oblivion, and opened up our border to be taken over. This is an invasion, if you haven't noticed. I had a friend that went down to the border just a couple of weeks ago, and he was down there doing a tour with a couple of mayors. And the mayor was showing them on the side of the streets, it looked like there had been a parade that went through downtown of this man's city along the border. Because there were little pieces of paper strung out, almost looked like pieces of confetti, that went down both sides of the street. And he said, "What is all this stuff right here?" And he said, "They're arm bracelets." Y'all heard about the arm bracelets? You see, the cartels that are trafficking all of these people over here, they don't just do it out of the goodness of the heart. They're turning these people into objects. It's basically slavery. Because to get past the cartels in every region that you go past, you have to pay. And when you pay, you get a bracelet. And they collect 4, 5, 6 different bracelets as they are funneled through and trafficked through Mexico and come into Texas. And as soon as they finally land somewhere where they can enjoy the things that we've built here, that our taxes have paid for, they cut them off and they just leave them on the side of the street. And the mayor of the town was explaining, we tried to pick these things up. I mean, there are thousands of them littered through his street. But it's useless because they're coming over by the thousands every single day. We just moved out to Willow Park, Texas. Y'all know where that is? It's the country to me because I grew up in the suburbs of Tarrant County. I'm like, wow, I'm a cowboy now. We actually own 31 chickens, which was an interesting discussion because I had talked to my wife, Chrissy, who's really loving having some land and a barn and all that fun stuff. And I said, man, it would be really cool to have chickens one day. And it was just kind of a theoretical thing. And then I came home the other night and I opened the front door and there was a red glow coming from down the hallway in my living room. And I'm like, what's going on? And it looked like a red light district down there. And then I hear my wife say, honey, we need to talk. And I'm thinking, oh, this could be good. And so I start walking down the hallway, and it's not what I had hoped for. It's a heat lamp, and there's a big bin with these little chicks in there. And I'm thinking, I don't have a coop. I don't have anything. Like, I have no idea. I have a golden retriever. That's about as close as I get to this. So I end up going on YouTube and typing in, things to know about owning chickens, and the first thing that popped up is a little YouTube video with the 5 things not to do for first-time chicken owners. And we had 4 of the 5 nailed down as a family, but we're struggling through it. It's good. But we moved out to Willow Park. The population of Willow Park, Texas right now is 5,200 people. Okay? Little town. You realize that we are creating a new Willow Park every single day with a number of illegals that are crossing just the Rio Grande sector in this state. This is no longer a situation where me and you get to talk about the long-term effects of having an open border. This is right here. This is ruining cities and towns and communities every single day. Do you realize that we still pay for so much of the stuff that these guys are getting for free? Do you realize that your county hospitals aren't allowed to ask whether someone here is legally or not? They just have to provide the service. And for those of us that actually have health insurance or pay our bills, what do you think that does to the cost of health care? To our tax rate. We're seeing it every single day. You realize that Republicans in the state of Texas, when in complete control of the government, decided that it would be a good idea to subsidize college tuition for illegals. You realize it's better to come here illegally right now than to move here from Oklahoma? There was someone in our Sunday school class just a couple of weeks ago, and we started praying for them. They brought up a prayer request, and they said, please pray for some medical stuff that we have going on, because it looked like their health insurance wasn't going to cover it. And they came to me and they said, hey, do you have any suggestions? Are there any charities? Are there anything, going on? Do you know what I had to look her in the face and tell her? If you claim to be illegal, you don't have to pay anything. If you will lie and say you're an illegal, you won't have to worry about anything. Do any of us actually think that this is sustainable? A year and a half ago, I got to experience a lot of you guys getting to see for the first time what I've known and found out the hard way the last 8 years being down there with a lot of these elected officials. For years, Greg Abbott has run around and gotten to campaign as conservative. Watch him on Fox News. I saw him on Hannity the other night, getting praised for closing down the border and addressing it. I was in the room when the Trump administration came down to the legislature begging us to go around Governor Abbott, who was refusing to declare an emergency on the border. The Trump administration came to Texas and said, we need you to declare an emergency, because if you do it, then we have all this money that we can use towards securing the border. Remember when Congress and the Democrats were holding up the funding for the wall? There was a way around it. But we didn't have a governor that was willing to do it. And then a year later, they came back and said, we've got some funds, we've got $5 billion, we want to keep going, but we're going to need you to help us get some of this land cleared out so we can actually build it. And Abbott's team's response was writing a letter out in the public, siding with Mexico, opposing Trump's trade deals, and telling us no. It's not an accident that nothing has happened on the border. I need you to understand that, because it's hard. Because it requires every single one of us to have an honest conversation with ourselves and realize that we have been duped. You're looking at a Greg Abbott supporter. I endorsed him. I gave him money at one point. Those who are down there realize that so many of these people are fake conservatives. I call them campaign conservatives, because you listen to them, and I've never seen one person run as a moderate Republican. Have you ever heard that in your entire life? No. They all campaign as a conservative, but what is happening down there is not what any of you would ever expect. But then, a year and a half ago, all of you got to take a sneak peek at what Greg Abbott and some of these other people actually think about the Constitution. You got to see one man who was elected into a constitutional republic start acting like he's a king. You got to see him with the swipe of a pen say that every single one of us has to stay home. And that this business, maybe not that one, but this business, they all have to shut down. We witnessed in a matter of days. The biggest job-killing move that any of us have ever seen. And it wasn't Joe Biden, it wasn't Barack Obama, or Nancy Pelosi, or AOC, or all the people they want to gaslight us on being upset with. It was Greg Abbott, who Texans elected as a conservative Republican, who mandated that every single one of us had to do what he said. 3 million Texans lost their jobs in 30 days. We still don't know how many thousands of businesses will never open again. We saw a man come out and give $290 million of our dollars on a whim, on an idea of paying a company who had never done it before to do contract tracing on every single one of us. This notion that our relationship with the doctor is between us and the physician, shattered. They are now going to be required to put you into a database. These are things, I don't know about you, but these are things that became reality that were like a bad, ugly conspiracy theory just a couple of years ago. These are things that you read about in a sci-fi novel, playing out in the most conservative state in this country. And the sad thing about it is when I was a legislator, we used to get phone calls all the time from different states. And I'm not sure that we quite understand this. Texans, we're proud of being Texas. We like leading. We like doing it first. We like doing it bigger and better. The rest of the country actually saw that. And they looked to us. And when I first got elected, I would get calls from Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri and Florida and all these different Republicans who would call into Texas and say, hey, what are y'all going to do about this? What are y'all going to do about that? And they were all waiting for us to lead the way. Because you have to understand, the state of Texas by itself is like the 8th largest economy in the world. Just the state of Texas. And these little small states that don't have those kind of numbers, they depend on somebody with the resources and the people and the financial ability and the landscape to lead on some of these issues. And we used to. Texas used to be one of the most pro-life states in the country. In fact, we were ranked number 3. You know what we are right now? 19. We used to be a leader in the Second Amendment. And we watched 22 other states pass constitutional or permitless carry before we did. Bernie Sanders in Vermont had permitless carry before every single one of you did. Texas has gone from first in job creation in the nation to 14th in unemployment percentage-wise. We have gone from being the rock in the Republican primary in the Electoral College to playing second fiddle to Ron DeSantis in Florida and Kristi Noem in North Dakota. And I don't know about y'all, but it really ticks me off. It makes me very upset. Because for my entire voting life, I have gone to the ballot box thinking that I was electing somebody and voting for somebody who understood that government exists to protect the rights of citizens, not to do anything else. I thought I was voting for more freedom and less government, and we haven't gotten it. And the sad thing is that instead of actually being accountable to some of these things, many of us have fallen into the trap of being mad at the Democrats instead of the ones who can actually make it happen. One of the things that I learned when I got into the Texas House very quickly was that it was powerful to know the rules. When I was first elected, I was 27. I remember no one covered my election at all because no one expected me to win. And I don't know if you remember this or not, Mom, but Bud Kennedy with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, who's just a Well, exactly. He needs to stick to giving food reviews. He was the food critic, and then they had to cut back, so now he's the political guy too. But Bud Kennedy called up on election night, and they were like, wow, Representative Stickland, you won. What's your plan? And having had no media training at all, and no real campaign except for what we kind of put together, I said, well, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos and see if I can learn how the floor works. Because I had never been to Austin prior to winning my election. And it was at that point when we won, I thought, man, I want to go down there and I want to do a good job. And someone told me, they said, you know, if you will learn the rules of the Texas House, that will give you a lot of power. Because you can use the rules to your benefit on legislation and parliamentary procedure and all this stuff. So I ended up having a buddy who gave me a version of the Texas House rules. And it's a book about this thick. It's the lamest reading you will ever have in your entire life. But I read it front to back like 6 or 7 times. Dang near memorized the stupid thing. Now this wasn't because I had some grand plan at the point. It was honestly just to avoid being embarrassed, because I had no idea what I was getting into. But I get down there, and I've got all this knowledge of the rules, and I learned on day 2, which is the day that you actually vote on the rules and have some debates on what's going on. I realized very quickly that the rules don't really matter. In fact, the rules are secondary to tradition. Tradition, this is the way we do things, they tried to tell me. Representative Stickland, I know it says that, but we don't do things like hurt each other's bills. In fact, I get down there and I realize very quickly when we started voting on stuff that the mass majority of things that were happening down in Austin didn't receive a vote at all. Think about that for a second. You guys remember when Obamacare first passed? Do you remember that that was a bill about veterans? And it came to the floor in the middle of the night and it was stripped on an amendment and turned into the biggest expansion of socialized medicine this country had ever seen. This stuff was happening every single day on the Texas House floor. In fact, I could have a bill that did one thing, have an amendment to the bill that completely changed the original purpose, and there would never be a record vote on how it was changed. But then I remembered that one member could stand up and say record vote. And I thought, how are all these things happening without a vote? So I started calling record votes. That.
Pissed them off.
Pissed them off is not the right word, but there are children, so I won't use it. But you get the point. This entire Texas legislature was a pre-planned, pre-organized I could single-handedly, by raising my hand and saying record vote, or by single-handedly offering an amendment to make something stronger, or to make something more conservative, that none of them could stop me. And that there would be enough people back at home who would be watching. And all I needed for them to do was to know the truth. My my idea and my political theory was very simple. That the people back at home, you guys here in this crowd today, it was safer to keep liberty and the conservative issues in your control rather than the politicians. And for you guys to have control, you needed to know what was going on. You needed to know who the bad guys were. You needed to know who the phonies were. You needed to know what was really happening and who was responsible for the death of the bills. And we went from almost all of the votes not being record votes, especially on amendments, to calling for record votes over 500 times in the first session. We went from letting these things sail through on their fake calendar called the local and consent calendar to slaughtering over 800 of them by standing up just by myself. Now, I don't say this to brag because I am a recovering politician. I'm not running for anything else. I enjoy being married. My life has been threatened, so this is what you're getting. I'm not here asking for your vote. I'm here to tell you what is really happening. I'm here to tell you that we are being lied to. I'm here to tell you that Republicans are to blame for the problems in the state of Texas, not Democrats. But I'm here to tell you that one person can make a true difference. I learned very quickly that the most valuable resource in Austin was courage. And the reason that courage was so valuable is because it's so rare. Everyone was so afraid of upsetting each other and not afraid of the people back home. One of the common traits between every single person that I saw in Austin was that every single one of these elected officials had a unique ability to read a room. They had the ability to try and figure out where the safe place for them to be was. And usually, they ascribed to the political theory that being not noticed was their best plan for re-election. Do you know how Phil King keeps representing you in the Texas House? I think we're at year 22 right now. I nicknamed him White Flag Phil. Phil's not an evil person. Phil's not a bad guy. You would leave your kids with him and he would take care of them. But Phil has been there too long. Phil cares more about what the people down there think about him than he does you. Phil would love to do the right thing, but he doesn't have the courage to fight for it. And that's not just unique here in Wise County. It's the same story where I get to speak in almost every single House district across the state. In fact, there's only like 4 guys that I would ever even support for re-election out of 150. That's super depressing to think about. But here's the truth. Here's the good news. Phil King's going to watch this online. Phil King's going to count how many people were in the room. Phil King's going to hear about who was here and who wasn't. Because if Phil King concludes that he has to do something to stay elected, he's going to do it. And the good news for us is that Phil is looking at groups and people like this to try and figure out what he can get away with. We've seen it time and time again. You realize that the 2 legislative priorities that Andy had listed up here were not going to happen until Don Huffines announced for governor?
Yes.
You realize that none of the stuff that we're kind of going, okay, thanks for doing your job, would not have even been done if these guys didn't feel pressure. You want to get something done in politics? You want to know what every single one of them cares about? They don't need your love. They don't even need your money. They don't even really need your vote necessarily. They're terrified of feeling pressure and pain from you. Pressure and pain, pressure and pain. Where do I need to be on every single issue? What's the least amount I can do to stick a pacifier in their mouth and keep them quiet? The best path to re-election is to not have an opponent. The best path to not have an opponent is to not be noticed. Phil King ain't running around doing anything, good or bad. He's lukewarm. If you guys think that we're going to be able to legislate our liberties back in this country and in this state, you're lying to yourself. The only way that we have a chance to save this thing, if it's not too late already, is to bring pressure and pain. And you say, Jonathan, how do I do that? I'm going to tell you. Every single one of us has a way to apply pressure and pain. In fact, Phil King knows every single person that matters in his district. He knows you, Mike, knows your wife, definitely knows you now, and your wife. He knows this group, he knows Parker County Conservatives, he knows Concerned Women for America and Texas Right to Life. He knows every single one of you that has any influence at all. And he's going to try and make this personal, because that's what politicians are great at. I'm your friend. Some of them will even have meetings with you, okay? Lynette, he'll take your phone call, won't he? They will. You matter by doing things. Some people can matter by giving money. Some people can matter by being active. Serving in the Republican Party as a precinct chair, knocking on doors, talking in your Sunday school class, showing up to groups like this. They're measuring all of your influence. There's 180,000 voters in Phil King's House District. 180,000. He does not have time to talk to every single person. So he's only going to talk to, listen to, and then be influenced by the people that matter in that 180,000. So you want to matter? You're going to have to start doing. And the good news is, we have a true patriot, Andy over here, who has stepped up to lead this effort. You see, coming together in groups like this, I just have to stop real quick and say, 4 or 5 months ago? Can't remember. 4 or 5 months ago? Lynette calls me and says, hey, Andy Hopper, great guy. I've gotten to know him, and he's thinking about starting a group. You should go talk to him. And I met Andy at this little restaurant, and we had a discussion. And I was like, Andy, you want to make a difference, you start a group. Start a group and educate the people in the area. Start a group and tell people the truth. Because once you learn some of these truths, you start to see things. And Andy had not really even been that politically active. Fair? Fair. But I knew Andy was going to be awesome because he only halfway trusted me. I mean, this guy was sitting, and I'm not even running for anything, but he's sitting across the table from me, and he's like, I don't know if what you're saying is true. And I was like, yes! This guy is not going to be wooed by any politician and their gift of gab. All we need are people who are going to actually look at the records. In fact, at one point, Andy was like, hey, well, I talked to Phil about this thing or that thing, and he told me this. And I'm like, well, that's nice, sounds great, but look at this. And Andy was like, oh my gosh, incredible. Once you realize that these people are not our friends, and their job is to make everything personal, that means your job is to make everything not personal. I'm not up here because I have an axe to grind with Phil King. I just want Phil King to stop lying. I want Phil King to do what he campaigns on. What I hear him talk about with people at his church. Because I've been behind the room and the smoke-filled room where the deals are made and things are done. And it's all a joke. And anyone that perpetuates that system has to be our enemy. It doesn't mean we hate them. It doesn't mean anything else. They're trying to make it personal. We have to make it unpersonal. We have to look at the facts. That's why Greg Abbott has to go. Greg Abbott is a nice guy. Greg Abbott's biggest problem is that he's a judge. You realize this is the first time he's ever been challenged in the Republican primary in 30 years. He didn't have one when he was district judge. He didn't have one when he ran for the Supreme Court. He didn't have one when he ran for Attorney General. And he hadn't had one for governor. Greg Abbott has never had to be held accountable by Republicans in a primary. There's no one good down there that hasn't had to run in a primary. You need these people to fight for it. You need these people to earn your vote. You need these people in the district and out of Austin so they get a dose of reality. The truth is the rest of the country thinks that Texas is a conservative bastion. You want to know why? Because they look at us and we're conservative people. We want to be left alone. We're not looking for a handout. We believe in the right to exist. We believe that life is precious and ordained from the Lord. We believe in the Bible. We believe in these things. And so people look at Texas and they say that must be a great place. But the facts say something else. The facts say that we are paying through the roof when it comes to property taxes. Third highest in the nation when you add all the local stuff together. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. Our grandkids will never pay our debts right now if we stopped. We have to start looking at the facts. We have to stop worrying about what other people think. You can't go home and be mad at any elected official who's playing the game down there when you're too afraid to put up a conservative yard sign in your yard and claim who you are. We can't be mad at the lobbyists. And by the way, there's 17,000 registered lobbyists in the state of Texas alone. For 150 people, there's 17,000. You want to get mad about the people who are influencing these guys? But you won't take out your checkbook and give a $5 donation to somebody that sticks their neck out on the line and runs for it? You see, for years, the left has been successful in growing government and trying to replace the church with government. How many of you remember when every church had a food pantry? Most of them are gone now. Why? Because people don't want to go to church and have to talk to the pastor and tell them what's wrong with their life and deal with all of that when they get to stand in line and get a free debit card from the government. You remember when all the churches were named after, or all the hospitals were named after churches? Now they're all huge medical conglomerates. You want to know why? Because they started chasing government dollars. Started expanding Medicaid. Went from being a ministry to a business. We have allowed this to happen. And folks, I'm just telling you right now, the way that society has been built on these ideas that they have shoved down our necks, we can't just change it tomorrow. They've been building society on big government being a part of everyone's life. That's why over half of the people are getting handouts from the government. We're completely outnumbered. More of us in Wise County take from the government than give. We're addicted to it. The only way we get off is if we start taking personal responsibility. The only way we get off the government literally taking care of everyone is that we have to start taking care of ourselves and our family and our neighbors and our church. We're not just going to go be able to turn off all these hospitals that are giving away free health care and giving free food and free education and free everything tomorrow. The church is going to have to start doing it again. It used to be that if you had a problem, you would go to the pastor or the church, and not only would you get help with the specific thing that you needed help with, but you got a little dose of Jesus, which we all know that that's what people really need, right? I'm just telling you guys, 9 years ago, I got tricked into running for Texas House of Representatives. And the main reason that my wife agreed to it at the time is she said, I'm sick of watching you throw your shoe at the TV. You got to do something about it. And I did. And I'm proud of what we did. And I know I made a difference. And I've never talked to one person who became a political activist for the conservative movement who regretted the work that they put in. Not that they don't get frustrated, but I promise you, it feels good. People ask me all the time, what are you going to talk about tonight? I had no idea. If you haven't figured it out, I didn't plan a speech tonight. I got nothing memorized. I have no talking points. But it's awesome that I get to show up here in Wise County and tell the truth. It's real easy to talk when you get to tell the truth. And I'm just telling you guys, I sleep good at night, knowing that I fought for liberty. And it's not always easy, but I'm proud to do it. And you should be too. Here's the truth. This group is going to be as powerful as what you guys put into it. If you want to cause pressure and pain and make the wrong guys who are in office do the right thing, then you got to be noticed. To be noticed, you got to keep showing up. There are groups like Wise County Conservatives popping all up over the state of Texas. I know because I'm speaking at a lot of them, and it's exciting. In fact, I will tell you, I think there's more energy right now than the Tea Party movement back in, 10 years ago. Because people are fed up. President Trump showed up and started showing us what a lot of us knew. We went from theories to facts. And there's a whole new wave of people who are at the end of their rope. And we have two choices. Give up or keep fighting. And I'm here to tell you, I've never been more encouraged since I've been involved in politics. It's not just this group, it's happening all over the state. And they're freaking out. That's why we're going to get a special session. That's why we're going to get some more conservative stuff done. Because they're looking at all of us and all of you, and they are concluding that that wasn't enough. So I'm going to say this before I start taking a couple of questions. Keep showing up. Take control of your government. Do your part. And I really think we can change these things. All right. Do we have a microphone? Do y'all have any questions? Got a few minutes? Sir.
Stand up.
Yeah.
Dan Bennett, Tarrant County. I have met Matt Rinaldi. He's been at Mike's meetings. And I want your interpretation of his courage.
Matt Rinaldi is the best thing that could ever happen to the conservative movement. Literally was my best friend in the Texas House when I was down there. I have zero doubt. Listen, I've helped a lot of these people get into office. I've been disappointed by more than I've been happy with. And I can tell you, yeah, Jeff Leach is one of them. We could stay here all night naming names. But I helped and endorsed a lot of these people. I am very guarded now about my endorsement because I've just seen so many people fall. And I do want to say this too, because I need y'all to understand this. If you had left me down there for long enough, I would have turned too. You need to hear that. It is an evil place. And while my soul has been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, my body has not yet been. And if I had been down there long enough, you would not have noticed me. Thank God I got to get out on my own terms before being rejected by my neighbors. I'm just telling you guys right now, I went into this thing not thinking term limits is what we need. I definitely support term limits now after being down in there because it's just ridiculous. Matt Rinaldi is excellent. Every single one of you should call Dion Starnes immediately. Dion, you need to support Matt Rinaldi or we're kicking you out too, please. And I love you. The other thing is, I want to say this too. I've been very hard on Greg Abbott. There are other people who are going to be getting into this. I don't care who gets in. Don Huffines is who I'm convinced we need in the state of Texas. I've served with him. And you look at his actual record and what he did, and he is the real deal. That guy was homeschooling his family before it was even legal in Texas, okay? I mean, this guy is a true patriot through and through. I don't even want you to just take my word for it. Go look for yourself. Look at his own record. Look at the bills that he filed. Look at who he's been donating to for 30 years. This is the best chance we've ever had, in my opinion. But no matter what, we all need to be a part of no one, not Greg Abbott. Yes. Heather.
So there, obviously Matt Rinaldi's one of them. What are the other three that you feel are the most conservative? And by the way, what everybody I want you to know this, that Don Huffines is who OCT is backing. We will be 100%. And we'd love to have you for Lieutenant Governor.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, but my 31 chickens need me in Willow Park, so I don't know about that. I appreciate that. The guys who I would look to in the Senate, there's one, Bob Hall. That's the only one that's worth our time. In the House, I would support Jeff Kaysen.
Yes.
Brian Slayton.
Yeah.
He's the real hero.
Yeah.
Kyle Biederman and Tony Tinderholt.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone else is like, "Oh," from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That crosses
Can
my
I just say one
record.
thing? I've been working for Matt today, Matt Rinaldi, and I emailed every SREC, whatever those letters are. And the feedback that I'm getting so far is a lot of them are already in the camp for Rinaldi because they know him. But there are some out there that don't really know him, and they're wanting to hear from us. So they're taking polls. So encourage your friends and neighbors to call your districts. There's just 2 people that you have to, well, you can email. You just look it up on the internet, you just click email, they'll take it up there, and you just email them and say, this is the guy I'm supporting. I'm supporting Matt Rinaldi, I'm also supporting Donna Funds, and I'm doing everything I can to get those elected. So I just wanted to let you know that is happening behind the scenes. They want to hear from us.
They do want to hear from you, and they're also trying to gauge. So be a part of that gauge, all right? They're all trying to figure out where they need to be. And I can promise you, they all know who calls them, and they're counting who calls on what issue. And they're using that to base their decisions on. So I'd say, if you can have a one-on-one meeting with any of your SREC, that's the best. Second best is phone calls into them. Third best is text messages. And fourth best is emails. And I'm sure, Andy, maybe we could send out an email to the group to how to contact their people. But that stuff does matter. You want to apply the pressure as they're making the decision on where they need to be. And you can have an impact on that.
Whether Matt Rinaldi has courage or not?
Well, you can.
Not whether it has courage, that's not what I asked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I asked the level of his courage.
Okay.
He's the guy who, on the protest on sanctuary cities, when we were working on that bill.
He's feeling.
Well, I'm better than you are at that, so I'm going to tell the story, because I was there.
I remember that as a representative of the House District. This is leading the entire state of Texas.
Matt called ICE with about 2,000 illegal aliens in the House chambers,
I
and he got
remember that.
assaulted by the Democrats.
I remember that.
But my favorite story, Jonathan, is when his wife Coralie told me the story about Matt. And she said she came home one day crying because Matt was being called racist all over Facebook because he was speaking out against illegal immigration. And she came home crying and said, "What are you crying about?" I said, "They think you're a racist." And he got a big smile on his face. And she basically confessed that you can walk up to Matt Rinaldi and call him brilliant, call him courageous, and it doesn't do anything. It bounces right off of him. But when you tell him that the left is saying these really despicable things about him, that's the only thing that affects him emotionally. He gets happy. That takes courage.
So when that happened on the Texas House floor, there were there's like 30 Hispanic members in the Democrat caucus. And at the time, the Freedom Caucus, there were like 10 of us. And it was the last day of session. And if you go back, you can watch the House footage there. But Matt actually called ICE on all the protesters who were disrupting. Because they had signs that said, "We're here illegally and we're not leaving," and all this stuff. And they were chanting, they were attacking police officers. I mean, it was literal chaos there. I mean, it was bad. And by the way, thanks for all you guys and doing what you do, law enforcement. You guys are under attack and y'all see it on the news, but you do know that the majority of us support you guys 100%. So thank y'all for what you do. I love law enforcement. I like you guys individually a lot more than some of your lobbyists down in Austin, because some of them are some union guys, but law enforcement, we need to stand behind them. They're under attack for sure. But we were on the floor, and there were like 30 or 40, and they knew they weren't going to be on TV, and it was this big thing. And so there were only like 5 of us in the Freedom Caucus at the time. And I remember, you can go look at it on YouTube, but Matt's here, and I noticed there's a scuffle, like literally a fight to break out. So I kind of go in the middle, and Matt Schaefer, who's about 4 inches taller than me, big guy in the Army right now, in the reserves, he had his brand new newborn in one hand. And all of a sudden, like literally a fight broke out, and it was like 5 against 30. And they're pushing and all this stuff, and Matt's got his baby, and we're like, I mean, it's literally like they were trying to punch him in the face. And I will just tell you, most people would respond to that kind of pressure and literal death threats. DPS took us back down and let us out secret passages in the Capitol because the people were going ballistic. Most would have stopped. Matt went on Fox News. And Matt doubled down on it. And to me, that's the kind of leader that we need, who's going to continue to fight back. Because I'm just telling you guys right now, they're not going to give us back our liberties if we ask for them nicely. These people want to fundamentally change the world. You understand that liberals, true leftists, the ultimate goal, because they are at war with God, is a one world government that is going to be controlled by the Antichrist. Like, they all know that. Some of them know that more than others, but the root of this is centralized government on a global scale. That is why we have to fight back for smaller government. And I'm just going to say this, and it's probably going to get on Twitter eventually, but Texas is more important than everybody else, and we cannot let her go down just because we've been with them before. So you can read between the lines on that. Okay, a couple more questions, and then we'll cut it up. Yes, sir.
Can you comment on Texit?
On Texit?
Yeah.
I think that we have to start looking at it right now. I will tell you, it scares me to death with the current elected officials that we have, because like Greg Abbott is president of Texas, not going to happen. If we can actually show that we can educate the masses again and expose the corruption, then I absolutely think that we need to start thinking about it. I think we need to start planning for it, and we need to absolutely realize that Texas is worth saving regardless of what happens around us, to the north, south, east, or west. We have to fight for liberty. Does that answer your question? Yes, sir.
We could comment in regards to the one world government and push for that, and it being a progressive idea. But with your experience in the House as well, talking about our true enemy isn't the Democrats, but the round Republicans. Are they in cahoots too?
That's what I'm literally telling you. I'm telling you that, like, I fought more with Republicans in the Texas House than I did Democrats. Because here's the thing, like, if we're in a fair fight, you know, if we're going to square up and we're going to go at it on an issue, I want to know who I'm fighting. And the Democrats will stand there and they'll own it, right? And they'll fight you head on. It's when Phil King comes around the back and goes, and I don't even see him, and he shanks me in the back. That's what killed almost everything conservative. I mean, I served when we had a supermajority in the Senate, 2 away from a supermajority in the House, and every statewide elected official was a Republican. So if something didn't get done, like, the Democrats are only as strong as Republicans allowed them to be. Like, it's a joke. You wait. If we ever see this state turn blue, these guys aren't going to work with Republicans. They're going to steamroll us. I'll give them credit. Democrats know how to win. Republicans are horrible at winning. Like, get out of the freaking way. The voters gave us a majority, and we're going to pass our agenda. And we're not going to apologize for it. But this is not the attitude. The attitude is that we need to work with the Democrats. And sadly, we see that play out. I mean, I will tell you, there are a list of 40 or 50 state reps that are Republicans right now in Texas that if they thought that they could get away with it, would rather be Democrats. They would rather vote as Democrats. And it's crazy. We have one who's been our congresswoman for years, Kay Granger. I mean, you realize Kay Granger, like, is one of the most liberal people in all of the country, right? She's not just like, oh, a moderate rhino. She literally caucuses and works with the Democrats and enriches herself off of our tax dollars and Panther Island and all these scandals, and we still can't get rid of her. I'm just going to tell you guys this right now. You can look on a map in the state of Texas, and the people that I mentioned, whether it was Bob Hall or myself and now Jeff Kaysen, Kyle Biederman, Tony Tenderholt, Brian Slayton, you want to know what they all have in common? Every single one of them has a local conservative meetup group who is strong and active in the community. Because even if you guys get someone elected, like you were to get rid of Phil King and put in like a true patriot in there, it ain't going to do you much good if you can't defend them. And I can promise you this, if you end up getting somebody good who actually does what he says they're going to do, they're going to come at him just the way they came at me, with fire and millions of dollars. And the only way you're going to be able to insulate them is to have a base of support. You can look at a heat map where the conservative legislators are on a map, and behind every single one of them are strong local meetup groups. Every single one of them.
What is it that we can do to affect change with this speaker crap. I mean, I've been watching for years Republican speakers that are really Democrats that, you know, I'm sorry, but if we have the majority, why are they putting Democrats in charge of committees?
Yeah.
Why is any of that happening? We need to do what the Democrats do, because right now the DNC is pouring money
Yep.
into the state
Yep.
to turn us blue.
Again, all we can do is directly the people that are over us. And folks like yourself, there's a few people here who aren't in Phil King's district. You're coming from Tarrant County and other stuff. Like, you don't have to be limited just to your area. But I'm just going to tell you guys right now, the speaker is a big problem because they caucus with the Democrats. That's where they start with their base of support. Then they just need a couple of Republicans to elect a majority because you only need 76. But the biggest, easiest problem for us to fix right now politically is the governor. Because if we had a governor that called out the speaker, then the speaker wouldn't be able to get away with what the speaker is doing. It all starts at the top. When you watch a football game, okay, ultimately, who do we blame if they lose? Quarterback, coach, okay? I'm telling you right now, we have a horrible quarterback and we have a horrible coach in the state of Texas. The owner, yeah. Freaking Jerry Jones, yeah. But if you want to have the biggest impact right now, if we take out Greg Abbott, who has more money in his campaign account than any elected official in the country at the state level, every single person will be shaking in their boots. I'm just telling you. Yes, sir. By the way, you should run for office or something. Chris Putnam back here. I'd vote for you.
The most important, legislative activity for this session still hasn't happened yet, and that's election integrity reform. And to your point about Republicans pandering to Democrats, and now, of course, all these woke corporations, including our friends down the road at American Airlines, are just awful. Do you have a reasonable expectation that we'll get legitimate, authentic, credible election integrity reform, or is it just going to be another show?
Yeah, so here's the deal. We had an election integrity bill that they were supposed to pass. The speaker ended up allowing them to kill it in the House, so we don't have it through. I do believe they will pass an election integrity bill in the special session that we all think is inevitable. But wake up, people. It's already a felony to cheat in an election. Okay? The problem here is not the law on the books. The problem is enforcement. And there are two individuals in this state that are responsible for enforcement. Okay? Number one is the governor, because he appoints the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is the one that is supposed to take all these dead people and illegals and cheaters off the voter rolls. Abbott keeps electing these nincompoops who won't do it. We don't have to have a piece of legislation or a bill to get him to appoint a SOS that actually cleans the voter rolls. They don't have to do that. They can do it by themselves. Okay? And then law enforcement, at least most of the state law enforcement, is decided by the governor. Okay? The next person that's involved is the Attorney General. Well, guess what Greg Abbott was before he was governor? Attorney General. Right now in the Attorney General's office, we have the budget for 2 election integrity lawyers out of over 800. Now, I'm not that good at math because I dropped out of high school, but 2 out of over 800, okay, is not putting any emphasis on protecting our elections. And I'm just telling you guys right now that we can pass whatever bill we want, Chris, but until people are in jail for cheating, which we know that they are, then it doesn't matter what they pass, okay? Like I was there when we passed, last session, we passed a bill that said, it is against the law to kill a child at 40 weeks. Remember when New York passed a sweeping abortion bill and they allowed for a child to be killed up to 40 weeks? Then we came out and said, we passed a law that said, we're not going to do that. It was already illegal. We already passed it. They're going to come to you in a few weeks. Phil King eventually is going to speak at something, and you're going to hear that we passed a strong spending limits bill. We passed that bill every session I was there. These people are playing games with all of this stuff. They're repassing things to make you think that they're doing something. How many of you have seen Greg Abbott run on, we secured the border, we did border security? Is anyone buying that? Religious freedom. Oh my gosh, that's the best one. To Andy's point, like, literally the only thing the religious liberty bills do is undo what Greg did with an executive order, which he shouldn't have been able to do according to the Constitution anyways. I really am excited about some of these questions and the look on some of your faces, because I think you guys get what I'm talking about, okay? What I want you to leave with, just beyond this information, is to feel empowered. That not only can you, as one person, make a difference in this process, but there are people waiting to see you do that, okay? Like, you're not gonna have to work hard to matter. Just a couple of months ago, Andy Hopper was like, I'm thinking about starting a group. Now, every single statewide elected official in Texas is watching his tweets on the daily in just a couple of months. You can do it too. But we're not talking about anything crazy here. You need to pray about what you have been given the skills to do, okay? Let's be realistic here. I'm not ever going to be like a marathon runner, so I shouldn't pretend to be, okay? Some of us are not going to be massive donors, okay? Some of us can't walk the blocks like we need to. But every single one of us has something that we can do that can make an impact. And the awesome thing about this group is that Andy is here to help plug you into things to make you efficient. We're not alone. This is the start of a movement. In fact, I was talking to a buddy who was speaking at another event at a brand new group down in Harris County that's going on right now. Something is happening. We are running out of time. Let's keep praying about all of this stuff. These are spiritual battles that we fight, and let's be obedient with what the Lord has blessed us with. And I just think that Texas can rise again. We can lead this nation, and we can save the free world, and we can do it together. God bless all of you. I hope you enjoyed tonight, and hope that you keep coming back with a friend next time to Wise County Conservatives. God bless.